Earlier this month, hundreds of scientists declared that climate change is no longer a distant threat. It has moved firmly into the present. Its cost can be measured in lost lives and livelihoods, lost homes and businesses, and higher prices for food, insurance, and rebuilding. That's why last year I put forward America's first climate action plan. This plan cuts carbon pollution by building a clean energy economy, using more clean energy, less dirty energy, and wasting less energy throughout our economy. One of the best things we can do for our economy, our health, and our environment is to lead the world in producing cleaner, safer energy.
As usual, the headlines are enough to make the head spin and the mind boggle at what, if anything, is really being decided. From global warming being fabricated by NOAA and NASA, to bipartisan report tallies high toll on economy from global warming, to Al Gore goes into hiding in a small cave on northern Newfoundland coast. Okay, maybe a little stretch on that last one, but we remain right where we seemingly have always been. Does anyone really know who is to blame for global warming, if anybody, and who is telling us the truth? Simple, right? Sure it is. Welcome into MidPoint. Senior Policy Analyst at Heritage Rose Institute for Economic Studies, Nicolas Loris joins us today. Nick, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
There is the question right there, and I'm going to go right back to that very first headline. Global warming fabricated by NASA and NOAA. Why would they fabricate this, and why are we continually getting two sides that are so unbelievably apart that they just don't seem to meet anywhere in the middle?
That's a great question, and you have to really look at the funding streams for how these climatologists are getting their money. But at the same time, just look at global temperatures. They've stopped increasing warming over the past 17 years when a lot of these climate models have predicted warming. And so are we really going to make all these policy decisions to take away our affordable, reliable energy sources offline for something that isn't simply true? And they're using this to say that climate change is happening now so they can implement these policies now. And yes, the climate is changing, but we're not headed towards any catastrophic warming with more intense and frequent natural disasters.
Okay, let me touch on that now when you talk about no catastrophic warming. Gotcha. However, there are those, and this includes a group, a bipartisan report, senior political, economic figures from the left, right, and center, Treasury secretaries are all there. They all got together, they made a report, they issued this report that says it is going to cost the American economy billions of dollars because the weather is changing, seas will rise, temperatures will change. So they are saying that if we as humans don't do anything about this, that it will simply go about its marvelous way here, and we will all suffer for it. Now, is this hyperbole? Are they stretching the truth?
They are stretching the truth, and you can even look at the data from NOAA, from NASA, and even from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the international report a lot of these climatologists and politicians rely on. And the reality is we're not seeing a trend in more frequent hurricanes, floods, droughts, any of that stuff. And sea level rise has been about the same as it's always been. So we're not headed toward that catastrophic warming. But let's say we were. Even if we were, these policies aren't going to do anything to mitigate global temperatures. You're talking about higher energy prices, lost jobs, lost income, all for about a few tenths of a degree Celsius change in global temperatures by the end of the century. So this is all economic pain and no climate benefit with these regulations.
All right, now a couple of minutes ago I mentioned former Vice President Al Gore in a humorous sense here. But let's tackle the Al Gore argument here maybe a little bit differently. Here's Dr. Bjorn Lomborg saying that global warming has been hyped, but he says we need to be more scientific. Now, go ahead and listen to this. It's a soundbite from Dr. Bjorn Lomborg as he was discussing this on Fox television.
Every time there's ice disappearing in the Arctic, for instance, we hear it's even worse than what the models told us. But of course, the fact that temperatures hasn't risen for the last 10, 15 years is definitely better than what has been hyped. The Al Gore argument that this is the end of the world has never been true. And it's been hyped because it felt like, yes, I could push the political argument a little bit. But of course, you can't scare people for decades on end. And what you're really seeing is that backlash that was very predictable from the very get-go. And what we need to do is get back to the science, which tells us, yes, there is global warming. It's not the end of the world, and it's something we need to tackle, but tackle smartly.
Okay, Nick, I'm going to take that. Tackle this smartly, knowing indeed that the climate is changing, Mother Nature. Isn't it still a responsibility of the human being here to do what they can to certainly try and ameliorate this, to do their part, are we not still just driving this because we don't take any action whatsoever?
Well, I'd say the climate is changing. Yes, man-made emissions are having an impact, but because we're not headed towards that catastrophic warming, we're going to see this over a long period of time. So coasts and areas that may be hit by natural disasters, whether they're man-made caused or not, are going to be able to adapt to these things and cope as necessary. So yeah, I think we can act smartly about climate change regardless of what the cause is, but at the same time, these big grand schemes to cap carbon dioxide emissions by regulating coal out of existence, for instance, they're going to come with huge costs and no benefits. So we should have policies that actually make a difference when it comes to combating climate change to the extent that it's a problem.
Okay, I'm going to take that again, and I'm going to take that to the next level here. Knowing indeed that we should do something, and knowing, of course, that there's a lot being done, it is impacting a lot of business, there's a lot of money being spent, there's a lot of rhetoric here. But isn't it still proper for us to take some steps at this point, to do something so that we don't reach that catastrophic point, or at least be able to push it back as far as we can until technology gets us to a point where it's easier or simpler to do something?
Well, I think the risk of this catastrophic climate change is so small and so into the future that we don't necessarily need to do something now. I think we would be doing something to our children and grandchildren by equipping them with higher energy costs and no benefit for these regulations. But I think just broadly, economic growth and prosperity have increased environmental well-being because we have the needs and the luxury to take care of our environment. So a healthy, robust, pro-growth policy that allows us to be more prosperous and care for our environment to the extent that any environmental problems need to be taken care of. I think that's the best way to deal with these problems. And so you can have a broad economic growth problem that allows folks to deal with these issues while not crippling the economy.
Exactly. There's the point that is always being made. Get to the point, spend the money wisely, improve the economy, and get to the point where we are finally able to get to the science in order to make this a little bit better for our time. Nick, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We're going to do this again because this conversation will be going on for so many years, and we'll continue to do it. Nick, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
It quite frankly is just that. Many say that if you allow technology and the economy to grow, that we will get to the point where technology and the economy will help us defeat global warming. What's your take? Tell us on social media, and of course we here at Newsmax will constantly take in your suggestions, because here on MidPoint we constantly question everything.